Last November, I took a trip that I still regret to this day. My friend Eric had access to a remote cabin deep in the Oregon woods, and he invited three of us, me, Chris, and Jordan, for a weekend getaway. The cabin belonged to his late uncle and hadn't been used in years, but Eric said it was still stocked and in good shape. We drove up on a Friday afternoon. The weather was cold, the sky overcast, and the trees on either side of the narrow dirt road looked like they were closing in on us. The GPS cut out an hour before we arrived. By the time we pulled up, it was nearly dark. The cabin was smaller than I imagined, old but sturdy. No power, no cell service, just a wood stove, gas lanterns, and an old radio that barely worked. Inside, there were two rooms, a main living space with fireplace, and a small bedroom in the back. Dust covered everything. We lit a fire, set up our sleeping bags, and cooked chili on the stove. It felt like we were stepping back in time. Around 9 p.m., we were outside smoking when we heard the crunch of leaves in the trees. Loud, deliberate steps, maybe 30 feet from us. We stopped talking. Eric whispered, "You hear that?" We all nodded. It sounded like someone walking. Not a deer, not a bear. Footsteps. Chris called out, "Hello?" No answer. The steps stopped. We stood there for almost a minute in silence, flashlights aimed toward the trees. Then Eric laughed nervously. Probably just some animal. But I didn't think so. The sound had rhythm. 2 feet. Human. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing faint creaks, like someone was slowly walking around the cabin. Chris was snoring. Eric was dead asleep, and Jordan tossed and turned, just as restless as I was. The next morning, we found something strange. On the window by the back bedroom, there was a handprint. Not ours. It was greasy, smudged, fingers long and thin, almost too long. We joked about it at first, but none of us admitted to doing it. The print was on the outside. Jordan looked disturbed. "You think someone came by last night?" "Who would be out here?" Eric said, "There's no one around for miles." We let it go, but the vibe was off. We decided to go hiking for a while to shake it off. The forest around us was thick, with towering evergreens and moss-covered stones. After about an hour, we found something odd, an old shack hidden behind some trees. It looked abandoned. The door was half off the hinges, the inside filled with junk, animal bones, broken jars, and something that looked like an old baby carriage. I felt a chill standing in there, like the air was heavier. Chris joked that maybe a hermit used to live here, but Jordan didn't laugh. He pointed at something scratched into the wall near the window. It said, "He comes when the fire dies." We left quickly. That night, it got even weirder. We built a fire early and stayed inside. No one really talked about what we saw, but the mood was heavy. Around midnight, the fire started dying down. We were too lazy to get more wood, so we just let it dim. That's when the tapping started. It was soft at first. Tap, tap, tap on the window behind the fireplace. We all froze. Chris stood slowly and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. No one was there. Then the tapping came again from the back window. Eric and I ran to it. Still nothing. Then all around the cabin, tapping, every window, like someone or multiple people, were circling us, knocking. We grabbed flashlights and stepped out the front door. No one, just trees and darkness. But there were footprints in the dirt, bare footprints. No shoes, just long, narrow feet, sunk deep in the soil. We stayed up the rest of the night, fire blazing. At dawn, Jordan said he wanted to leave. We all agreed, but when we stepped outside, Eric's truck was gone. We thought it was a prank, but the tire marks led away from the cabin and disappeared into the trees. It didn't make sense. None of us heard the engine start. We were stuck miles from civilization. We argued for hours. Chris accused Jordan of taking the keys as a prank. Jordan swore he didn't. Eric was pale, shaking, insisting he'd left the keys on the table. That night, we heard voices, soft, whispering, coming from the woods. It sounded like they were saying our names. Chris grabbed a hatchet from the shed and sat by the door. Eric wouldn't stop pacing. Jordan locked himself in the back room. I stayed by the fire. I was too scared to sleep. Around 3 a.m., Chris screamed. We rushed to the front door. He was gone. The hatchet was lying on the steps. No blood, no struggle, just gone. We called his name until sunrise. Nothing. The next day, we made a plan to hike out. It would take hours, but we couldn't stay. We packed what we could and started moving east. But the forest didn't feel right. No matter how far we walked, we kept passing the same trees. I marked one with my knife. 20 minutes later, we passed it again. Somehow, we weren't getting out. The whispering started again. Closer now, like someone was behind the trees, just out of sight. Eric snapped. He ran toward the sound, screaming. We chased after him and found him kneeling by a creek, shaking. He pointed across the water. There was Chris, standing still, but his skin was pale, eyes completely black. No whites, just dark, bottomless pits. He smiled. Eric screamed, and Chris disappeared into the trees. We dragged Eric back to the cabin. He didn't speak for hours. That night, Jordan vanished. We locked the doors, sat by the fire, but at some point, he must have unlocked the back door and walked out. I found his boots by the steps in the morning. Eric was barely responsive, just rocking back and forth, whispering, "He comes when the fire dies." I tried to keep the fire going, but I was running out of wood. That night, I woke up to silence. No crackling. The fire was out. Eric was gone. The front door wide open. I stepped outside with the lantern. There were figures in the trees. Dozens of them. All pale, all staring. One stepped forward. "Chris," he whispered, "it's your turn now." I ran into the woods. I didn't stop until the sun rose. I was found by a search party a day later, wandering the logging road barefoot and dehydrated. I never saw Eric, Jordan, or Chris again. They never found the cabin either. Search teams combed the area, but it was gone. No structure, no tracks, nothing, just forest. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear the tapping, and I haven't let a fire go out at night since. 3 years ago, I worked as a forest ranger in northern Minnesota. Most of my time was routine, checking trails, monitoring wildlife, helping the occasional lost hiker. But one winter, I was assigned to watch over an old fire lookout station deep in the wilderness. Near was a small wooden cabin we used for overnight shelter. This story still keeps me up at night. The cabin was known as North Point 12. It hadn't been used in years. My supervisor said it was safe, just remote. I was told I'd be there alone for 4 nights. The station had a radio for check-ins and basic supplies. No cell signal, no electricity. On day 1, I hiked in through knee-deep snow. It was dead quiet, no birds, no wind, just cold. The cabin was smaller than I expected. 1 bed, 1 chair, a fireplace. Everything smelled old and damp. I settled in and started my routine, logging weather data and scanning the forest from the lookout tower. Nothing unusual. Until nightfall. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't explain. It wasn't an animal. It was whistling. A slow, steady tune, like someone trying to mimic a lullaby. I sat up in the dark, heart pounding. The sound was outside, moving slowly past the cabin. There was no reason anyone should have been out there. I stayed frozen in my sleeping bag, listening. Then, silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I checked the perimeter. There were footprints, bare feet, no shoes. Human, leading from the tree lean to the side of the cabin and then disappearing behind it. But no exit prints. Like whoever it was, just vanished. I radioed it in. HQ told me it was probably a prank or maybe a drifter. "Stay alert," they said. "Let us know if they return." That night, I locked the door, bolted the shutters, and kept the fire burning high. Around 3 a.m., it happened again. Whistling. Closer this time. Right outside the window. Then something tapped on the glass. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The tapping stopped. Then something whispered, right through the wall. "I see you." It sounded like it was right next to my ear. I grabbed the radio and whispered for help. Static. Then a voice, my voice, repeated, "I see you." I dropped the radio and covered my ears. I must have passed out from fear, because I woke up to sunlight. The door was still locked, but there were handprints on the windows. Dozens of them. Long fingers. Some reaching nearly the whole pane. I wanted to leave, but the path was buried under fresh snow. The storm had cut off the road. I was trapped for at least another day. I spent all afternoon boarding the windows, blocking every crack with blankets. I didn't care about protocol. I just wanted to survive the night. At sunset, I heard something moving on the roof. Heavy steps, then dragging like something crawling. I lit every candle I had, sat in the center of the room with an axe in my lap. Around 1 a.m., the front door creaked. Not opened, just moved. Something was pressing against it. Then a voice came through the wood. "Let me in. It's so cold." It sounded like my mother. She's been dead for 6 years. I didn't move. It started knocking again. Soft, rhythmic. "I'm lost," it said. "Please help me." Then nothing. No sound at all, until the whispering came back. This time inside the room, right behind me. "You shouldn't have stayed." I turned, swinging the axe, but nothing was there. The cabin was empty, but something was wrong. The candles went out one by one, like they were being pinched. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath, and in the dark I saw it. A shape, not human, tall, slender, no face, just a gaping, black hole where the head should be. Its arms were too long, fingers dragging on the floor. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. I couldn't scream, couldn't run. Then it was gone, and the fire reignited by itself. I was still sitting in the same spot, axe in hand, when the sun came up. When the Ranger helicopter finally came 2 days later, I didn't say much, just that someone had been snooping around. But I knew better. I requested a transfer that week. Never went back. The weird part? A week later, the next Ranger sent to North Point. 12 never made it. They found his truck abandoned at the trailhead, footprints in the snow, walking toward the cabin, but none coming back. They searched the whole area. Cabin was empty, except for one thing left behind. A message, scratched into the wood floor. "I see you." This happened to my cousin Eric in 2019, and he still refuses to talk about it. He had just gotten out of a bad breakup and needed some time alone, so he booked a remote cabin in the Appalachian Mountains through a private listing. The owner described it as isolated, peaceful, and perfect for clearing your head. The cabin was an hour from the nearest town, and the last stretch was a dirt road barely wide enough for his truck. When he arrived, the place looked off. It wasn't run down exactly, but there was something unnatural about it. No birds, no rustling wind, just absolute stillness. Inside, the cabin was rustic but clean. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, no TV, no internet. That night, he texted me. "Place is creepy but quiet. Might finally get some sleep." But he didn't sleep. He told me that around 2 a.m., he heard something walking across the porch. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Then a low humming sound. Not quite a tune, more like someone imitating the noise of a broken fan. Eric grabbed his flashlight and peeked out the window. No one there. Just the porch swaying gently. But the air smelled like sulfur. He brushed it off. Maybe an animal. Maybe nerves. Next morning, there were scratches on the door. Thin, deep lines, like something had dragged claws across the wood. But what animal does that vertically and at that height? He decided to cut the trip short and leave that day. But when he turned the ignition in his truck, nothing. Battery was fine. Gas tank full. No error codes. It just wouldn't start. He called a cabin owner. But the call didn't go through. No signal. He was stuck. So he grabbed his gear and started hiking down the road, hoping to find a signal. After about 20 minutes, he noticed something strange. There were no tracks behind him. Snow had fallen the night before. He should have seen his own footprints. But it was like the snow behind him remained untouched. He kept walking. Then he heard it again. That same humming. but now it was coming from the trees. And closer. He started running. But the faster he ran, the quieter the forest became. No birds, no crunch of snow, just a humming. He turned a corner in the path and froze. In front of him stood a man, tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, face in shadow, just standing there, perfectly still. Eric called out, but the man didn't move. He backed away slowly, turned around, and the man was standing there too. Same hat, same posture, like he had teleported. Eric ran back to the cabin, heart pounding, but the humming followed him, and so did the man. When he reached the cabin, the front door was wide open. He swore he had locked it. Inside, all the furniture was gone, completely stripped, as if the place had never been furnished, except for one thing, a chair in the center of the room. And sitting in that chair was himself, an exact copy. Same clothes, same scar on his hand. The other Eric looked up and said, "You're not supposed to be here yet." Then it smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that split too far across its face. Eric blacked out. He woke up in the snow outside the cabin, with blood on his hands and scratches down his arms. The cabin looked normal again, furnished, locked, no chair in the middle. His truck started without issue. He drove straight home, never looked back. When I saw him later, he was jumpy, pale, barely spoke. But here's the weirdest part. A month after he got back, he got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper. You left the door open. He burned the letter and moved cities the same week. Swears he still sees that man in the hat, sometimes, standing in reflections or behind trees, watching, waiting,